Okay, well, thank you for coming out on Saturday morning. And I used to live in Los Angeles, but now I live in Albuquerque. I was here for 22 years as a law librarian and a legal research and writing professor at Pepperdine. Any students here, former students? From when I was there? Or no? Just recently. Okay. I've had my former students in my room, and that's been interesting. I was there from 1985 to 1989. No?
I was a dinosaur way before.
You were a dinosaur before that. Oh, so before computers. I believe it. And so I was a law librarian for many years in Chicago and Los Angeles, and I practiced law here in California. Yes, I took the California bar after taking the Illinois bar. I guess I'm a masochist. And in 1999, I got this great idea that I should teach lawyers how to use the internet. It was still a little bit new. And you know, I thought I would only have a job for a couple of years. But 15 years later, we're still teaching people how to use the internet, how to use it better. Some people were teaching how to use it for the first time, but most people just how to use it more effectively. And Judy, a little bit about your background.
I currently am a law librarian and I teach legal research at University of Southern California. I've been there about 6 years now. Before that, I was at the University of San Diego, and way back before that, I did practice law in California for a little while. So I think I found something that suits me much better, and I really enjoy teaching it, and I've enjoyed this transition from law students to teaching attorneys and librarians as well. So I'm happy to be here today.
And we have Mark Rosh hiding here in the side. Mark is the Vice President of Internet for Lawyers. He co-speaks and co-writes with me for the last 15 years. And Mark is going to come on and in the last half hour and take Judy's place. We will take a break about 11:25 or so and give you like a 5-minute stretching break. You can't leave the room unless you're desperate. No, you can leave the room, but 5 minutes because we're only going until 12 o'clock today. And Mark has a lot of investigative research he's going to tell you about. Judy and I are going to focus on legal research. So when Judy and I decided to write the Internet Legal Research on a budget book, you know, I did a lot of research about how lawyers are using the internet and paralegals. And the ABA did a legal technology study in 2013, and they said that 96% of the respondents reported that they did online legal research. Now, the 4% who didn't, that would be my two brothers who practice law in Tennessee. They don't even have computers on their desk. True story. I can't believe I'm related to them. So 96% of the people who answered the survey said they used the internet online, but most of them were not satisfied with free research. They just weren't comfortable with it. They didn't know where to go, which sites to trust. And then there was another survey, and this one was in 2012, and it surveyed new associates 5 years or less. And they said they spent about 31% of their time doing legal research, which was about 14 and a half hours. And those in practice said that they did legal research about 35% of the time. And of these new associates, 5 years or less, they said that they used fee-based online resources for 8 of their 14.5 hours of legal research and spent about 4 hours using free or low-cost online resources. Large firm associates used online fee-based resources 74% of their research time compared to 46% of small firms and solo. And so, you know, Judy and I decided that we would try to write a book to help people find the most credible sites, so you didn't have to decide for yourself. And we have a lot of screenshots in the book, and you've got the handout in front of you, I think. Everyone have a handout with all of the screenshots? No, where is the handout? Handout?
It was given to them electronically by email.
Oh, it was given to you electronically by email. Okay, so anyway, when you go back to your office or this weekend when you go home, you'll have every single screenshot that we're showing you today during the seminar. So we, decided to write a book and show you a lot of screenshots and show you step by step how to use what we think are the best legal research sites. So the first site that I want to talk about is an American Bar Association site, and it was created by the Legal Technology Resource Center. This site is a really cool site. It lets you search full text through 400 law reviews for free. And you can read the articles for free. So when I do legal research, I like to start out with an article on the topic. Instead of me trying to figure out what are the leading cases, what are the statutes that are involved, I'd rather read an article that's going to already tell me all that information, especially if it's an up-to-date article, of course. So I'm going to do some research about a parent who kidnapped their child. There was a divorce going on, and the parent kidnapped their child and went out of the country, left the US, went to a foreign country. And I represent the husband, and he's not real happy that the wife kidnapped their child. So if I do family law, I might not deal with international family law very often. I've really got to get up to speed in that area. And I know that there's this Hague Convention, and I know some of my keywords are going to be child custody and kidnap. And he also tells me that his wife is accusing him of domestic violence, and she is stating that she abducted the child out of the country to protect herself and the child. So I'm going to do a search looking for an article based on that fact pattern. Now, one thing you need to know about the LTRC site is it is searchable, it is powered by Google. So if any of you are Google searchers, you'll be comfortable searching this. You can use quotation marks for phrases. You know that when you leave a space between a word, that indicates and. You're going to connect your words with the Boolean connector and. If you wanted to use or, you would type in the word or, but it has to be in all caps. So when you're searching on regular Google and you want to use or, it has to be in all caps. Now, how many of you have ever used a proximity connector with Google within 5 words, within 10 words? Do you do that with Lexis and Westlaw? Yes. Okay, so that's a common, theme. Well, nobody knows, except for people in this class and anyone watching us on video, that Google has a proximity connector. And they don't document it. It is not anywhere in their documentation. Actually, Mark found it one night when he was following a Google engineer on Twitter. And I always, joke with him that, you're spending so much time on Twitter. Well, he learns so much on Twitter. Really, all the underground information, any information on new trends in research. We also do a lot of social media research and teach lawyers how to find people's profiles. Any ethics opinion about social media, Mark has found using Twitter. So when you want to do a proximity search on this site, which is powered by Google, the secret proximity connector is the word around. And you literally have to type it the way I did, in all caps. And then in parentheses, you put the number of words you want the words on either side to be near each other. So I want the phrase child custody around 10 words of the word kidnap. And I want the phrase Hague Convention, and I want the phrase domestic violence. So I'm really looking for something very, very specific, obviously. And will I find anything? And the answer is yes. So I find an article, and the very first one is Relevance and Fairness, Protecting the Rights of Domestic Violence Left Behind Parents. Perfect. Couldn't ask for anything better. And then when I click on it, I get the full article. And the article is from Duke Law Journal, and it's from 2011. So it's a pretty recent article, and I can start reading the article and finding cases and statutes online. Now, I'll show you a little bit later, and Judy will too, how to find statutes and cases for free online. Once I find what I want, I'll show you how to actually get it for free. And we like to talk about free to save you money. Some people tell me, well, I already have like a Lexis contract. Why would I need to save money? I've got this monthly, Well, when they go to renegotiate your contract the next year, they look and see how much you used. And if you used a lot, then they're going to raise your price. So I always say, well, try using free information first, and then hop onto Lexis if you have a Lexis or a Westlaw contract, and finish up your research there. Use their Shepard's or their key site. But I usually start with free, just to start, getting my preliminary information in order.
Okay, so I'll pick up here, and this is a different website. So the article that Carol found looked like it was really good. It was on point, and as we read through it, it cited some primary law, and one of those was a section of the U.S. Code. So that's why I want to show you this site now. You can see from the heading, it's called Cornell LII, which stands for Legal Information Institute. It's a site that is put up and maintained by Cornell Law School. It's really, really good. They do a lot of neat things here, and I'm going to talk about a few of them. So you can see across the top here, the little tabs there. I'm going to go through and explain most of those, but Get the Law is a way to search through databases. I'm also going to talk about the one called Legal Encyclopedia. And that's a neat thing about this site. There are lots of sites. This is what we call a portal, and we go into it more in the book. But portals gather information from other sources and bring them together and organize them in a way that you can find, that you can search. So they will often link you to the state statute page, for example, if you're looking for a specific state statute. But in the case of LII, they also have a lot of original content that they and their contributors contribute to the site. And so that's what I'll talk about with the Legal Encyclopedia. They will do entire articles, and I'll show you another example of that, of another good website toward the end of our talk here. And let's see, and whoops, lost my screen there. And you can also they've got a search box there where you can search at the whole site and its databases too.
So that would be there at the very top. You can put keywords there to search all of their databases, US Code and several other that we'll show you.
So here are some examples. If I had clicked the first link there that was on the left called Get the Law, of the resources that they have here. You can see federal law, they have the US Constitution, they've got the US Code, which I just mentioned is what I'm going to be looking up in this example. Code of Federal Regulations, you can read it, tons, and they have individual state resources. So that's all the resources that I have access to if I'm going to use LII. And just very quickly, the legal encyclopedia that I had mentioned, it has, this screenshot shows some of the tools that you can use to search that too. You can browse all the pages. They even have articles in Spanish if you need to research some law that is in Spanish. They have something called Project Inbox that deals with spam. We don't really go into that, but you can search it also. That's the good search link there.
So you can full text keyword search.
Yes, if you run across a term that you're not familiar with, for example, just enter it in that. Okay, so moving on to a slightly different example. I lived in Florida for a while, and I have a problem there now. You may have seen it in the news recently, where pythons are attacking. They've taken up residence there, and they seem to be thriving at the expense of all the local little animals. You're not seeing rabbits anymore. The turtles are disappearing. So I was maybe working for an environmental agency and wanted to do a little bit of work on that. So I went to my WEX page here, and I decided to search threatened species. And you can see I entered in quotation marks because I want them to show up together. And here, there we go. Here's what I get when I search for threatened species. My top result here is a US Code, so I'll show you that in a second. But over here on the left, these are all the different types of resources that I can look through when I do a search of threatened species or whatever I want to search. So we won't go into all of those, but it's just to show you that is how, if you wanted something from, say, the CFR, which is right up there at the top, you can see, you can search the entire database, and this is a recent change, and then you filter down to the resources that you want. Okay, so this, I decided I wanted to take a look at the US Code section that talks about my threatened species. So this is a section that I pulled up that was relevant, and I'm just going to show you quickly what the features are here on this page. You can see they do tell you how current the section is that you're looking at. Let's see, they've got some tabs over here. We are in the US Code part of it. They have notes, which I won't really go into, updates. You can see, again, exactly how current the information is that you're looking at, because that's always important. You always want to be using most current information in case it's changed recently. And authorities, which are that, in parentheses, you can see it says CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. We'll look at that in just a second also. And then again, over here, you notice this little box over here has actually changed. Now we've got a toolbox for the US Code. You can see we have lots of resources there that we could use. They have tons of resources on this site. It's
And you can
really-
search the CFR by popular name. So if you're looking for, the lemon law, you don't know the section in the CFR, you can search by popular name. I mean the US Code, sorry, in the US Code. And I think my favorite part, though, is the authorities. If I have a US Code section and I want to see if there's a regulation in the Code of Federal Regulations, I don't have to do the research myself. Cornell has put a database together that links me directly to the related Code of Federal Regulations. And that's, to me, just the top thing that I use the Cornell site for.
So let's actually go ahead and take a look at that. Yeah, this is when I click the authorities, this gives me the related CFR sections, and they're pretty thorough. They list a lot of them. I'm not going to go into all of them, but as Carol said, they pull them all together for you. So you've got right there a list of the sections that are probably going to be relevant for what you're researching.
And you can link right to it. They take you right to the actual regulation.
Yes, all of these little, if you can tell from where you're sitting that it's blue, all of those are links that will take you actually to the primary resource. So it's great. Great information. Okay, let's go back to our original search here where we pulled up the code section and talk about these filters a little bit more. Like I said, they've got all kinds of things, federal rules of civil procedure, the UCC. And so you can go back and really be thorough with your research on this site.
So you don't have to go into each site yourself and do the research. They pull it up for you on the left-hand side, and you just click on it.
Yeah, normally this would be like 20 different websites if you could get the stuff, find it easily to go to. It's all right here in a list. So I wanted to see maybe if there's some Supreme Court cases that are relevant for my threatened or endangered species. So what I've done is from the page before, I've clicked Supreme Court, and now I'm showing the results that are filtered only to US Supreme Court cases that talk about threatened species. So there are lots of other resources, and if you explore this site, you'll find them, you'll get more familiar with it, but we just wanted to highlight this because it does bring together so much information and can save you so much time. LII, Cornell.
Okay, another legal portal that I use pretty often is justia.com, and Justia does a lot of things. Some are similar to Cornell, some are different. Now, you can keyword search through the entire Justia portal if you want, or you can click on links by topic or by jurisdiction. So any way you like to do your research, you can access it that way. I could click on document type also. I could click on constitutions, laws, legal forms. Now, Justia has various free case law databases. They have a free federal dockets database. They have, I think you mentioned earlier that you can search in Spanish at Cornell. Well, Justia actually has been putting up a lot of primary law from Latin America. And so you can read cases and statutes from Latin America if you need to do that at all. They're not in English, they're in Spanish, but you can use Google Translate to translate them. Now, one thing that I like about Justia is they have this blog directory. So how many people here are bloggers? Any bloggers? Anyone blogging? Okay, Mark, you can raise your hand. Okay, so why do I like blogs? Well, same reason why I like articles. I like someone else to do the research for me, and then I like to do my updating on my own. So if I can find someone who's blogging on a topic that I'm interested in, usually they'll mention current cases, they might cite to statutes. So I always like to look for blogs. So where can you look for legal blogs? Well, you can do it at Justia. And Justia calls legal blogs blogs, B-L-A-W-G-S. So, instead of just going out there in the world, going to Google everything like I know so many people do, we all do, I'm going to go to Justia because they have honed down the world of blogs to just legal blogs. And I can, let me go back for a minute. I can keyword search for blogs using this directory. So I could also look at the most popular blogs. I can see the featured blogger. And if you look at the bottom here, there's categories. So I could look for an employment law blogger. There's 312. I can look for legal theory, entertainment and sports law, whatever topic I'm interested in. I could click on that and see who's blogging on that topic. And if I find someone who seems to really know what they're talking about and is blogging often, I might start following that blogger. Or if I just want to look something up quickly, I would come here. Yesterday we did a seminar in Century City, and there was a lawyer who was the food lawyer, thefoodlawyers.com. And he was fascinated by this because, as you can see, there's no category for food law. And he said, I think I'm going to start blogging in food law and get added to this. So it's something you might want to think about. Now, talking about my child custody case that I mentioned earlier and the international kidnapping of the child. So I look down here, and I don't really see anything for child abduction. I don't see the Hague Convention. But I do see that there is a family law, and there's 360 people blogging about family law. So I might want to take a look at that. So as I look down this list, you can see there's actually a blog called A Child is Missing. Well, how perfect is that? Okay, and this blogger is talking about some leading cases, and I can see one of them is from 2014. And then this one here is also from 2014. So it sort of tells me right off the bat, this person's keeping up to date on this. I'm going to look at their blog. So this is the blog that is A Child is Missing, the International Child Abduction blog. And I can read the case. Now he has summarized a case from Westlaw. I don't have a subscription to Westlaw. How can I get this case? Well, I can get this case a lot of ways for free, and we'll show you how to do that. And this case is about someone who abducted their child to Argentina. So it was pretty incredible. Now, I could also go back to the blog search, and I could type in the name of the case at the top. And I could see if anyone else is blogging about that particular case. Because, maybe the person who I'm looking at, that first blogger, maybe he's biased. Maybe he always represents the parent who kidnaps the child. Maybe he always represents the parent who's left behind. So I want to see, is anyone else talking about this particular important case? And as it turns out, I didn't find anyone. There wasn't anyone talking about it. Now, another thing I like about Justia is they have, just like the blog directory, they have a directory for Twitter, but it's lawyers who are tweeting. So it's very on point for us in this room. Do we have anyone tweeting in the room? Okay, one back there. Are you following me?
Not yet.
Okay, good. And I'll follow you. Email me or just send me a tweet, huh? And Mark does a lot of tweeting. Judy, are you a tweeter at all?
Not much.
Okay. How about you, Ryan? Does the library tweet?
The library does tweet on occasion.
Okay, the library tweets. So if I'm looking for someone in an area I'm interested in, I could just type keywords in here, and just like the blog directory, I can click on categories, and I can find people who are tweeting about topics that I'm interested in. So it's just a really good way for you to start getting comfortable using blogs and Twitter. If you don't know how to start, I think this is a great way to start. Yes, question?
Ignorance will show. In regards to this tweeting, would we be able to follow these online through this particular website without having to become a Twitter member, which I have no desire to do?
So the question is, can you follow someone on Twitter without becoming a member, without getting an account in Twitter?
Yes.
And the answer is,
Yes.
Mark?
The answer is yes, absolutely. The vast majority of Twitter feeds, term of art for the updates that people send, are public. The Twitter user has the ability to make them private, to protect them. It is the vast minority of accounts that are protected in that way. So you can identify people here at Legal Birds who you are interested in viewing, and then when you click the link, it takes you to their page, their feed on Twitter, and you will be able to see all of the tweets that they post, and they will not know that you are reading the tweets that they post.
But he can also follow them, yes?
If
Without
you-
an account?
No,
No?
you can, if you want to passively receive the updates as they come out, you have to have a Twitter account. You can, though, actively visit their page on Twitter and see everything that they've posted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could you put a Twitter feed and an RSS feed? Could you put a Twitter and an RSS?
So the question is, can you add a Twitter feed to an RSS feed, an existing blog RSS feed? I don't believe that you can, but
Mark, do you want to stand up or sit over here?
I told you I should have been over there.
Okay, join us.
So the Twitter feed exists sort of as a separate animal. So if you wanted to integrate a Twitter feed into an existing blog feed, you would need to use some sort of RSS aggregator to create one feed from the two. And there are a bunch of them online. You can probably create it in Yahoo Pipes, which is more technical than we need to get into for this presentation. But there are also a number of free widgets available online that you can add to your web page that would display. So if you have a web page or a blog and you wanted to add the Twitter feed as sort of a separate section, you can do that.
And you can talk to Mark during the break or afterwards if you want any more technical information.
Okay, so Carol mentioned when she found the blog about child abduction that he had talked about a case that was on Westlaw. But unfortunately, you may not have access to Westlaw. Many of you do. But what if you just want to not pay to look at this case? We have several resources, and we're going to talk about a few of them here. A couple of them are CaseMaker and FastCase. Carol's going to talk about one of those in a little while. Those tend to come through bar associations, not so much California, unfortunately, but a lot of people do have access to those. The one I want to talk about right now is totally free, and it's available for everyone, which is Google Scholar.
So how many people are using Google Scholar already? Yesterday at a seminar, someone came up to me at the end and he said, I just Google a case on google.com. And I said, well, don't do that. Google has a legal database, and go to Google Scholar. You search it the same way you search google.com. What's the problem with just Googling a case? Well, you might Google a case, and it might bring you to a lawyer's website or a lawyer's blog where he might have just summarized the case. And he might have mis-summarized the case, right? You really want to go to Google Scholar where you're going to go to the official full text of the case to read.
And in addition, Google Scholar has some resources as well that we're going to show you that just pulling up a case somewhere randomly on the internet may not have. So to get
Good
there, you go to Google Scholar, and under the search box, typically the default is often articles, scholarly articles, obviously. Switch it to case law, which is just to the right of it. After you do that, oh, look, case law. After you do that, then below that, you can see it in the back of the room there, you'll get some more options. You can choose your jurisdiction. So it's not just like Googling the whole universe.
So you would click Select Courts. Now, Google is going to show you, in this slide, New Mexico courts. I live in New Mexico. Google knows I did a New Mexico court search recently, and they know I did a federal courts recently. So they're going to put some of your recent courts up. But you're going to probably want to select courts.
Yeah, if it doesn't guess right, or if you want to do multiple jurisdictions, for example, this is the page that you'll get when you click Select Courts. So you can see the boxes here. I don't know if the boxes are showing up back there, but these all are little check boxes next to all of these resources. And you can select all, you can clear them all if you want to start over again, and you see that we've got both federal and state.
And you can search federal and state together. You could search federal with 3 random states. I mean, you can do a lot of mixing and matching. I think we had a question.
Yes, I was in trial this past week in a foreign jurisdiction, and thankfully they had a law library upstairs. But the judge required not only specificity as to the site, but as to the pagination as well. Does Google have such on this Google Scholar program?
So you want to know, the question is, does Google have
242 Cal Reporter.
Does Google have pinpoint sites? Right. And yes, they do. Yes,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
In just a second, I'll show you a page from a case that Google lists, and I can point these out to you also. So after you have selected your jurisdictions, then you'll come to this search box.
And you can't really see the box. So there's actually a box at the top.
Yeah, maybe you guys can see it better than we can because of the angle. You can't
Imagine
see
a
it.
box.
Okay. Yeah, it's right there.
If you
and it
click,
looks
I think
like
I have a red,
search box.
I think I have a, no, maybe I don't.
Let me see what I get if I click. There we go. That's where the box would be if you could see it.
Trust us,
Yeah,
it's there.
We've seen it. So that's where now you would enter your actual search terms. And again, the same search terms and the proximity connectors are available that Google Scholar typically uses. They do have an advanced search.
And guess where it is? See that little arrow? Isn't that obvious?
Yeah, you can, and this may depend on your browser. This is what Chrome looks like. I was looking at it last night on Firefox, and sometimes they will put a little arrow up there. You may have to hunt around depending on your browser preference, but it's there, and you can do an advanced search as well.
And it also depends if you're using a computer or your phone or an iPad. I mean, the advanced search is just always sort of hiding. Once you find it, you'll know in the future, but do hunt around for it. And Judy and I really encourage you to use the advanced search menu. It really helps you visualize your search, and it lets you do a few extra things, and we'll show you that.
Yeah, so even though you probably can't see the boxes here, each of these little fields here has a box there where you can actually enter terms for that. So what I had done for this search was I knew there was some kind of copyright case out there involving Microsoft and Apple.
So you added those three terms together, Microsoft and Apple and copyright. But we don't type the word and in. Anything put in that first box, they'll put an and in for you.
So my second box here, though, I wanted an exact phrase. I wanted to find trade secret. And if you can see right up there with the exact phrase, that applies to this box below. And this time you can actually see the box, I think.
And
So
if you wanted more than one phrase, then you have to use quotation marks around each phrase. If you're only putting one phrase into that box, you just type your phrase, no quotation marks. And so it saves you 2 keystrokes. You know, and time is important here. 2 keystrokes.
And so those were all I could have entered. You can see there are more fields here. Without words, you can omit things to prevent some irrelevant results. And authors, authors in our searches for case law tend to be the judges. That often works that way. They're not 100% perfect, but judges, that's a good way to find a judge. Published in is another weird one, less helpful. I mean, again, that's more useful. They haven't changed a lot of things or everything from their normal Google Scholar, which finds scholarly articles, to convert it to searching for case law, so not everything fits. It took me a while to figure out what published in does here. It will find the abbreviation of the reporter. So if you want something in the Pacific Report, if you type in P2D, it actually works for published in. I'm not sure how helpful that is, because you would probably have a citation or at least the party names or the terms that you're interested in searching.
And if you were looking for articles, you might know it was in Duke Law Journal, so you could type in Duke, L period, J period, and some keywords, and it would pop up. And also, I think we should mention where it says return, well, anytime you see where it says return articles authored by, in your brain, just say cases. Because Google has done a really bad job at switching from articles to case law. This is sort of an afterthought, the whole case law database. So when you see the word article, return articles authored by, just say to yourself, authored by judges. And is there another one where that comes up? I'm trying to think. No, I think
articles
that's it.
published in was the one I mentioned also. Articles dated between as well. It works for the date of the case. Obviously, you want a case, not an article. Just assume that they mean case.
Question in the back.
Yeah, you just mentioned something that it's not, there's an afterthought about calling it case law, and at least until recently, I remember this being beta.
So the comment is, until recently, you remember this being in beta.
Right, and then it doesn't seem to be as exhaustive in searching and finding case law as Westlaw is.
So, and the comment is, you don't think it's as comprehensive as Westlaw? I find it to be fairly comprehensive. When I've used it, they have unpublished opinions, for example, and I think we're going to show you an example of that in a couple minutes. And I've done a lot of testing. Westlaw versus Lexis versus Fastcase versus CaseMaker versus Google Scholar. And I have an article on the Net for Lawyers website sort of comparing them, and especially comparing their citators. So I think the only thing that they're not like really great for is citation shepherdizing, and I'll show you that. Judy and I will show you that in a few minutes.
I did find, I was wondering how comprehensive they are. So when we were researching for the book, I did do some compared because of teaching. I do have access to Lexis and Westlaw. In some older cases, in some more obscure databases, there are some gaps. So what I tell my students a lot of times is start here. If cost is a factor, and who is it not a factor for these days, start here. You will get the bulk of it, and then if you want to go and double check, if you have that option, maybe that's a safer way to do it, but this will definitely save you some money.
I think as far as not being comprehensive, you're probably right about like state case law. They don't go back as far in time as Westlaw. I believe Google Scholar might go back to 1950. For the U.S. Supreme Court, they go back to the beginning of time. And I can't remember for federal appellate courts, but we have it listed in the book. We can look it up at the break.
Yeah, we did exhaustive research and documented it. Okay, so I've entered these few terms here in their advanced page. And so here, really here, is what it looks like when, so here's a list of search results, which looks somewhat, it looks a lot like your typical Google Scholar search results, looks somewhat like a regular Google search results. So let me show you what you do. You've made some specific searches so far. You can filter some more. It knows, even though it says articles, it knows that we're in legal documents. I can still go back here if I want to change my jurisdiction and go here and re-filter to select different jurisdictions. I think for this search I probably included all dates, but now if I want to restrict it and get some really recent case law, I can do that. It's way over here on the left. I may be blocking it for some people. And down at the very bottom, which is actually maybe one of the most important, the default searching is by relevance. And again, this works as Google's algorithm does. You can change the default to search by, to list it by date as well. Down here.
And what does relevance mean? Well, there's no human being saying this case is really more relevant than this case. Relevance just means that your keywords appear more times in this case. And then the next relevant case, they appear a little less, and it just goes down, down, down that way.
Yeah, Google makes no bones about the fact that they are not trained in the law, and they do not have editors sitting here evaluating these for you. They write algorithms, they write really good algorithms, but they're a surprisingly small number of engineers who are doing this. And so it is done by algorithm, so you have to, take it with a grain of salt when they say relevant. And the very bottom here, which you probably can't see at all, says create alert. You can see my little call out box there. If you have a search set, a bunch of terms, and we'll talk about this again in a couple minutes, you can also have it send you updates when these terms appear in new cases that have been added to Google's database.
And Google Scholar's free, the alerts are free.
All free, that's the best thing about Google, it's still free. So I think it's this first case here maybe I decided I wanted to read because it looks like that's the one I'm looking for, my Apple versus Microsoft. So here's what we promised. Here's at least the top part, the caption part of an actual case from Google Scholar. So what we are in right now is the read mode. It's right up there, which gives you the full text of the case. Let's see. Oh, there we go. It highlights your terms. It may be hard to see in this screenshot. It's a very pale yellow, but you can quickly kind of scroll through it and see where your terms show up. That might save you a little bit of time. And one thing we're going to also talk about in a second, they have a how cited feature. I'm not sure I would use the word citator, but it will give you a little bit of help in at least if you want to find some related cases. So let's talk about that now. And I know I promised you that I thought I had an example here of I think Westlaw's equivalent is maybe star pagination. But if you do scroll through and look at the pages of the case, they do have notations, and sometimes you have to look and based on the page number and figure out which reporter they're pulling it from. But they will show you if you need a pinpoint site from this, so you can do that. So I want to talk a little bit more, though, about their How Cited feature. So if I were to click that for this case, this is the page I would get. And they've got 3 different things going on here. The big one here in the middle, or on the left-hand column, this is their How Cited. And again, it's an algorithm, but it's a pretty good one. It takes cases that discuss your case somewhat in depth, again, insofar as their algorithm can determine that. And it gives you a little blurb from some of the ones that they deem to be more relevant. So that can give you an idea of how other cases are treating your case. So it'll give you, and again, pulls up some of the more relevant ones. So you can jump to those if you want. Again, all of these here are links that'll take you directly to the full text case in Google Scholar's database. Over here on the right-hand side, cited by, this is the one that they attempt to be comprehensive with. They're not going to give you the blurbs, but they're going to pull up everything. In this case, 808 cases that cite to your case. And notice also, so you can see more of them you can see the whole thing by all 808 of them by clicking that link at the bottom. Notice these little bars on the side
Click
here.
once.
Oh, are they right there? Isn't that cool? So these are all, they look the same. They're all 3 bars, but again, it's like a depth of treatment kind of feature. So if I pulled up all 808 of them and started scrolling through them, I would see, oh, now I'm starting to have only 2 bars. Now I've only got 1 bar. So that is based on how much this citing case talks about your original case. So that'll help you too if you're looking for something to explain it or maybe support your case or
So 3 bars is the best. It's 3 thumbs up.
1, maybe they cited it and nothing more. So, and finally, this last one over here in the bottom, related documents. These are cases that do not cite to your case, but based on the search terms and the terms that appear in these cases, that Google thinks that they are also talking about the same thing that your case talks about. So it's another way that this is something that maybe even like a Shepard's or a Key site doesn't do so much, that it will pull up cases that are related yet don't cite it. So that's a really helpful feature of Google Cite.
So what's missing from the citation page? Editorial treatment.
Yes.
Nothing's going to say R for reversed, or O for overruled, or A for affirmed. So that's the downside of using free or low-cost case law databases that have a citator. It's a citator kind of light. Another downside about using these free and low-cost databases is, I'm going to show you in a moment, is that they might have your case in their database, and if it's an unpublished case, they will show you the unpublished case, but then when you go to cite it to see if there's other cases citing to it, they don't put the unpublished cases into their citator product. And I'll show you exactly what I mean with this example. So I'm looking for a case called Tienda versus State. Someone told me it's a great case to help you get social media profiles admitted into evidence when the owner of the profile uses a pseudonym. How can I prove that it's theirs? They used a pseudonym. What can I do? So there's this great case someone told me, and they told me that it's about Facebook or MySpace. They couldn't remember which one. So I'm going to put, with at least one of the words in that box, MySpace or Facebook. So I don't know which one it is. That's my or. And then they told me they thought it was about 2010, so I'm going to use a date restrictor. So what do I get? Well, I get the case that I want. I get this great case about Ronnie Tienda, and the court admitted evidence from his profile, even though it didn't have his name. Now, there's one problem with this case. Do not publish. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can cite to that because it's not, you can't usually cite to cases that aren't published. Now, every state has different rules. When I moved to California in 1985, we couldn't publish cases that weren't cited. I think they might have changed that rule. Have they changed that rule? Anyone know?
It's still generally no. You don't want to cite to an unpublished case.
You could cite to it for persuasive, but you can't cite to it for mandatory because it's not published. Of course it's published, it's written, it's right here in Google Scholar. And it's in Lexis, it's in Westlaw, it's in Fastcase, it's in CaseMaker. I found it in all of those because I checked. So then I thought, oh, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if it's been cited. Maybe it's been overturned or affirmed, or I want to see what went on with that case. And when I did that, notice also there's a very long docket number. I'll talk about that in a moment. So when I did the how cited, what is it saying to me? We could not determine how this case has been cited. Why can't you? Because we do not put unpublished cases in our citator database. Why don't you? Because there's no official cite, and it's an algorithm. And they don't even use the docket number. So you have to be very careful with unpublished cases. Why? Because I said to myself, well, I am going to do something a little different. I'm going to use the case name Tienda, and I'm going to use the word MySpace as keywords. And I'm going to search the database, the case law database, and see if there's been a later case that talks about my 2010 Tienda case that wasn't published, or maybe there's a later case. And so when I do that, the first thing I see is my case from 2010, and then right above it, my case from 2012. It did go up to a higher court in Texas, and it was affirmed, and it was published. So I could cite to it. Now, I'm sort of using keywords and parts of a party name and parts of keywords to do this search. Now, I could have typed in the docket number because the 2012 case does refer to the 2010's docket number. Why didn't I just type in the docket number? Because it's really long, and a lot of times different courts kind of goof up the docket numbers, so I don't always use the docket number. I might try the docket number to start with because it's such a precise identifier of that case. But typically I'm just going to use a party name and maybe a word or two from the case. So that's how you sort of do your, you kind of create your own citator, basically. And you can do this with Fastcase and CaseMaker and any other free or low-cost database that you use that doesn't have as good a citator as Lexis and Westlaw. And then you can also create free alerts on Scholar, as Judy mentioned earlier. And when I click on the alert button, it automatically puts my keywords in there for me. Now I could change that. I could say, you know, I really want to add or Facebook, or I want to completely wipe out this search and type in a completely different search. I could put in a party name, I could put in a judge's name, I could put in an attorney's name who I'm following, or just keywords about concepts that I'm following. And then you'll get an email every time that shows up in results. So basically Google is continually running your research for you and sending you an email to alert you when something shows up with those keywords. Does anyone use Google Alerts? Okay, a few people. I just started using it lately for Facebook or MySpace or social media and evidence, because I always follow those kinds of cases. And then if you use regular google.com, they also have an alerts. So it's totally separate than the case law alert system. Don't get the two of them confused. So if I'm doing a web search on google.com and I want Google to keep on running my search for me through the general google.com database, I can set up an alert there also. So I've been mentioning Fastcase here and there, and I'm wondering how many people in the audience subscribe to Fastcase or get it for free from some wonderful place. One person. And where are you getting it from?
New York bar.
The New York bar, New York City bar,
Yeah.
or state.
State.
Okay, so there's two databases that 48 bar associations subscribe to for free for their members. 48 states. 2 states do not do this. Delaware and California. Exactly. So if you are a member of the LA Law Library, which is only like $195 a year, is that the lowest membership? You get free access to Fastcase. So you might like Fastcase, you might want to get rid of an expensive Lexis or Westlaw database. You might want to keep them both. It's up to you. So the other place in California that subscribes to Fastcase is the San Fernando Valley Bar Association. It comes with your membership. Anyone a member of that bar association? Okay, so that's your two options. Or you can subscribe to Fastcase on your own. It's a little less costly than Lexis and Westlaw. Or, here's the really cool thing, you can put it on your phone or your iPad or your Android for free. It's an app. Here's the bad part. That free app is not as robust as what you are getting on the computer through your bar association or if you pay for it. And I'll show you the things that are missing from the app. But if you just need a quick lookup of a case or a statute, the free app is there. You register for it, and you give them an email address, and you give them a password, and you're off and running. Question?
Not talking about an app. You're in front of your computer in your office. You have the choice between going to Fastcase or to Google Scholar to look up a case. Which one do you go to first and why?
So the question is, if I'm using my computer and I have a choice between Fastcase and Google Scholar, which one will I go to first? Hands down, Fastcase. Why? Because they have so many great, sophisticated search features and a better citator. Not the best. It's not Shepard's, it's not Westlaw, Keysight, but much better. And we'll go through Fastcase just to give you guys an overview to see if you think you might like it. So the first thing you'll notice on the front page is the quick case law search. And this is where you will key search all cases through all jurisdictions. It's just a real quick overview. And then you enter your search in that big search box. And you're going to be doing all jurisdictions. Now, in the middle column is your last 10 searches. So it keeps automatically your searches, and I can rerun a search that I did yesterday. If I haven't used Fastcase in a long time, it could be something from last week. It's really going to vary on how often I use Fastcase. And then on the left-hand side, I can start a new search. And I can search other things besides case law. So it's called Fastcase because when they first came out a few years ago, they only had case law. But they have added all kinds of legal materials. You can search AG opinions, you can search statutes, you can search the US Code. I mean, it's become pretty much a full legal research database. Court rules, constitutions, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the right side, and this is another reason why I prefer this to Google Scholar, it is help. Does Google have a help? No, of course not. Does the internet have a help? No. But Fastcase has a help, and it's free. So you can look at their frequently asked questions, their facts. They've got about a 30 or 40-page user guide online. In the Internet Legal Research book, I have maybe a 15, 20-page chapter where I've created my own user guide for Fastcase. They have tutorials that you can look at for free. They have live chat, and it works. You know, you just get on, and within a couple seconds, you're going back and forth with someone at Fastcase, and they're answering all your questions. They have email support if you prefer to use email. And they also have webinars that you have to sign up for in advance, and they're free. And they give you CLE credit for it. Google doesn't give you CLE credit. Google doesn't do any of that. So it's really a very nice system. They have a few things that you have to pay for outside of their system. One of them is Hein Online, which gives you access to thousands of law reviews in law journals. Just an amazing amount going back way far in time. They also have a search newspapers, and that just links you to newslibrary.com, and for $2.95 you can get an article. Never pay $2.95 for an article. That's way too much money. Instead, get your Los Angeles County Public Library card or your Los Angeles City Public Library card, and we talk about it in the book, and you can log in from your home or office, and you can access all kinds of databases for free, including magazine and newspaper articles for free. Okay, so get your library card. So let's take a look at a little bit more about Fastcase. So you can choose to do a keyword search, Or you can do natural language, and natural language means you're just going to ask a question. Is there a case about child custody and international kidnapping? Just type it in as we speak. And then you can do a citation lookup. So you can just type in a site that you have. You just want to pull the case up. So you make that choice first. And then you enter your search terms into this big box. How do you search fast case? Well, I love this because at the very bottom of the page, they give you all their search tips. They tell you, how you can use or and, or is there a proximity connector? And so it's right there. I don't have to memorize any of this. I can use quotation for phrases. Their proximity connector is w/, w/2, w/10. Don't have to memorize any of that stuff like we do with Google, for instance. So are you liking this better than Google Scholar so far? Yes, okay, me too. And then if you don't want to see the search tips, you can just click off, and then you can put it back on if you want to show search tips. Sometimes people don't like to have all that extra stuff on their search page. So I'm going to search for the word bus and the word integrate or segregate. Except I'm not going to type out the word integrate or segregate. I'm just going to type the root of the word, and I'm going to add an asterisk after the T for both of them. That tells Fastcase that I want to expand my word. I want to get integrate, integrating, integration, anything that starts with that. Segregation, segregating. Can't do that on Google Scholar. They don't let you extend words. And I'm putting it in parentheses. Google Scholar doesn't let you use parentheses. Why am I using parentheses? Because it's kind of a complex search, and I want to make sure that Fastcase understands which words I want to belong together. I want bus, and I want either integrate or segregate, or both. For those of you who don't know it, and I didn't know it for a long time, or really means and/or. So it will pick up both words or just one or the other. It's interesting, but that's what it does. And then I pick my jurisdictions. So this is a lot like Google Scholar, the jurisdiction page. And you can see here, I can do all federal. I mean, I can just mix and match as much as I want. I click the plus signs, and it just keeps on opening up more and more choices. And I can mix and match states, different states, federal, whatever I want, whatever I'm interested in. And then you can just go into the check boxes, and you can check whatever you want. They do have some special courts, special federalized courts, tax court, customs court, court of international trade, board of immigration appeals, and then all of the district courts and the appellate courts and U.S. Supreme Court and all the state courts. So it's pretty good. U.S. Supreme Court goes back to 1754. States go back usually to 1950, but each state can give Fastcase extra data if they want. So some states go back to the 1800s. Question? How far back does California go back? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. I can look it up and email you. Or I want to say 1950 because I'm almost positive 1950 because California doesn't participate in Fastcase, right? You're not a member. The state's not a member. California's in. Fastcase has added a bunch of stuff. So I think they've only added their traditional 1950. You can select all, so you don't have to go into each box and click 50 different states. So at the very bottom, you can select all, and you can clear all, and you can start over again and go into the specific states that you're interested in, or federal. And then there's all the states. You could also select a range of dates if you want. You can choose the maximum number of results that you want, and you can sort by relevance over here on the right, or case name, decision date, cited generally, or court hierarchy, if I want to see the higher courts first to the lower courts. And then down here is their citator, and they call theirs authority check. And they specifically say, this is not a citator. Well, what is it? It's like the Google Scholar How Cited. It's a citator. It's just not as robust as Lexis and Westlaw because it doesn't give you editorial treatment. It doesn't tell you reversed or affirmed. But truly, it is a citator. They're just trying to cover their bases. Okay, so Mark says California courts go back to 1950. Thank you, that's what I thought. And they'll go back further if California ever enters a membership agreement with them. So on the left-hand side, they tell you how relevant each case is, and we already know what relevance is. More of your words are in this case than the next case. And then on the right-hand side, they have suggested results from Hein Online, and that's law review articles. Now, one thing about the LA Law Library, if you're a member of the LA Law Library, you do get free access to Hein Online, and that's a great database. So if you didn't have access to it, if you were just subscribing to Fast Case on your own, or you were subscribing through the San Fernando Valley Bar or the New York City or State Bar, you would have to have a membership, a subscription to Hein Online separately. And that's, I think, $595 a year, and they have a monthly. So when you see your results list, you can view your results and you can sort them in all kinds of ways. And the one thing I guess I like the best is I can show only the titles of the case, or I could show the first paragraph of the case, or I could show the most relevant paragraph of each case. I usually choose the most relevant. And then when you look on the left, it's a lot like I think we've seen in Google Scholar, we've seen in Cornell LII. They've got columns here where I can click to the different cases. I can filter by jurisdiction. So I did all jurisdictions, and now I want to focus specifically on Montana. So I can click Montana. They have this little highlight box up here, and so I can just highlight the word bus. Now, I can't highlight the word integrate asterisk because there's no such word, right? So the highlight thing doesn't work when you are extending the root of a word. Now, here's something that I'm not sure if Lexis and Westlaw have this problem. I haven't, maybe you'll know this or you'll check. I searched for bus, but it's showing me business. Why is it showing me business? Well, because it starts with BUS. And so a lot of times you're going to see bad hits. It's going to happen. Now, what if I wanted to see if there was an expert witness in this case? I'm really curious about that. But that wasn't one of my keywords, right? I didn't put in expert. What can I do? Well, if I go to my laptop or my computer and I press Control F as in find, I can get a find box. And the find box is here at the top. Does anyone have an Apple computer? Same thing, but you use the Command key and F as in find. And you type in the word that you're interested in. I typed in expert, and it highlighted expertise, and it highlighted expert, Dr. James Held. So you can scroll through a case very rapidly. You can do this on Word, WordPerfect, on a web page, PowerPoint slide, anything you've got open practically. You can use this Control F feature. Does anyone use this? Is this something that, okay, and does anyone wish they knew this like 10 years ago? 15 years ago? Yes, this is like my favorite tip. So this is the full text of the case, and I can add it to my favorites if I want. If I add it to my favorites, it'll show up on my little mobile free app device, which is kind of cool. And then authority check. So that's where I would go to see if my case has been affected in any way, if it's been cited by a later case or has it been affirmed or overruled. And they give you a red flag. So that means something negative, something bad about your case. They also have a citation summary here on the side, over here, and they tell you state cases and district court cases that have cited to your case, so you can jump right to them from here. And then they have a timeline. What's the timeline? It's a graphical representation of what's going on with your case. I'm not a real visual person, so I don't typically use this. On the left-hand side are all of the cases that your case cited in their case, in your one case. And on the right-hand side would be the citing cases, the cases in later years that have cited back to our case. The bigger the bubble, the more important the case is. And some people like this because when you get results, you usually just get a list of cases and you don't really know which one is necessarily more important than the other. Some people like to look at this. Does anyone use things like this? Have you seen other databases that have these graphical representations? So it's something you might want to look at.
And I guess an equivalent that you could use if you were using Google Scholar is if you would first have to go into the case, and then you could look at their how cited, and you could see if you see that 2 cases have cited it versus 800. That would give you some idea, but it's still not as easy as just glancing at this one thing all at once.
That's a good use of that. I hadn't thought of that. And then, so our case is, let's see. The assisted living case is citing to our case, which is people who care. And I could click on that and I could read the case and see how it affected my people who care case. I can resort by jurisdiction, so if I'm only interested in specific courts, I can do that. I don't have to look at all of the authority. And then there's 6 cases that have cited my case. And I can read them and I can see if they've affected my case in any way. Once again, no editorial treatment, except for that little red flag, which tells me there's negative treatment. Now here's something that's really kind of unusual, kind of cool. It's called Foresight. It says there's 3 additional cases found by Foresight. What this is an algorithm that Fastcase has created, and they're showing me 3 cases that they think are related to my case, but they don't use all of my search terms. But they want to make sure that I see these 3 also. So it's just a little extra. And then Fastcase also lets you set up alerts, just like Google does. So I can follow cases, have Fastcase run the search continually and send me an email about it. Statutes, real quick. When you want to look at a statute, you can search all 50 state statutes together with the US Code. You could search 1 state, 50 states, 20 states, your choice. And when you go to look at statutes, if you click on the plus sign, it tells you how current the code is on Fastcase. And you should always check that. What else is new in Fastcase? This is something they've added recently. So the statute at the top is there. I can read it. But at the bottom, this is what's new. They've added case annotations. And I think that's always been a complaint about free and low-cost databases, that they don't have case annotations like Lexis and Westlaw do, but they do now. Google doesn't have this. Google Scholar, Fastcase does. So here's the app that I put on my phone. And these are actually screenshots from my iPhone. And you can look at recent. You can do a new search, look at your recent searches. The searches I did on my laptop, I can look at on my phone. I can get right to them. I can look at my saved searches if I've saved any as my favorites. I have a settings button. I can sort of set up some parameters about do I want to see things by date or by relevance. And then here is where I would, if I wanted to search case law, I do it right there. If I want to search statutes by keyword, I do it there. If I want to browse statutes, because I know the statutes section, Business and Professional Code, Section 50, I would click on Browse. So Fastcase app does not have Hein Online, doesn't have Foresight, it doesn't have the Bad Law Bot, it doesn't have AG opinions. It's just statutes and cases. It's a very bare bones. But you know, if you're in court and you need to look something up really quick, I think it's really useful.
Okay, so we're getting close to our break time, but I want to go ahead and talk about one more resource before we take our quick break. And it's not this one. This may look familiar. Surprise.
She'll explain.
Yes. Have have any of you guys seen what I'm showing up here? It's Thomas. If you've looked for it recently, you may have noticed that you're having a little trouble finding it because it's gone now. What this is an example, and in the book we go into a little bit more if you've bought it, of government resources in general are really good, especially authoritative sites to conduct your legal research. They're almost always free, and since they're coming from the source of the creator of the law, they're going to be pretty authoritative and accurate. So this is something that is useful for anyone who ever researches in federal law, especially something involving new legislation. Thomas, there used to be a website called Thomas that covered that, but it has been replaced in the past year by something called congress.gov. And it attempts to cover the same topics that Thomas used to cover, just in a more user-friendly way with less clicking and moving around of things and long lists. So I'm just going to talk briefly about this. So this is their homepage, and you can see they've simplified it a lot. They have the nice big search box there. Over here, there's a little drop-down menu there. You can decide which of their resources that you want to search. Here, let me move on to my next slide here. I have some of this stuff actually highlighted for you. Here we go. So this will show you the drop down, the different sources that you can search on this site. So we've got current legislation, all sources if you want to search their whole site. And it really, hence the name congress.gov, it has a lot of information on Congress and members of Congress and committees and things like that. If you need to do a legislative history on something, a federal legislative history, this is a great place to start. All of this stuff would be useful for legislative history as well. Like I said, the blue links up here, you can go directly to those specific areas of the site. And recently, they've had it, I should point out, is still officially in beta. Right up there, you probably can't read it from the back of the room. They have a little tiny red word beta up there. It's been up for over a year now, but they're still calling it beta because they continue to add things to it. They are soliciting feedback. I think, somewhere over here, usually about on their homepage, they'll say, tell us what you think of this site. And you can type out an email to them. So they are adding and updating continuously. So this tips thing is fairly recent. They've just added that in the past month or two, and they continue to add more things. So by the time you check it, they will probably have added something else. So let's see, what am I searching here? Oh yes, let's go back to my Python in the Florida Everglades research here that I was working on. So I just went up and entered endangered species. Again, you can use quotation marks on this site, and animal. And I searched all sources over here. And so this is what my search results look like. They're trying to make it really user-friendly for you. So all of these boxes here, this shows me what I have searched. And if I want to remove it to get a broader search, I can just X out of it. Right now, I'm including the congressional record, all legislation, and the last 2 Congresses. Let's see, what else can I do? Over here, I can do a lot of the same thing, a lot of filterings. I can add, change dates if I want to go back more in history. Over here, up in the search box, if I want to filter further because I've gotten 2,000 documents and that's a little unwieldy, I can go back and add more terms to it to get a more specific document, or list of results rather. Here's a very similar page. I'm just showing you some more features. I can sort results by relevancy, date, latest action that Congress has taken if I'm looking for legislation to see if it's passed or where it is in the legislative process. And see these red, or maybe they look pink from where you're sitting, boxes? That tells you the type of document that you're looking at, because remember, I searched everything. So this top one is an article from the congressional record. Under that is a bill, and in a second I'll show you what a law page looks like. They have a nice little handy visual thing. It kind of fades out there toward the end of it, but this lets you know for a current active bill, lets you know where it is in the legislative process. So this one here, for example, has just passed the House. Let's see, let me move on. Here is an actual page. If I clicked on one of these documents, in this case I clicked on a law, this is what the laws page looks like. So I've got a little summary up here that gives me a lot of information. It lets me know this links to the representative who introduced the legislation. The public law, if I want to go directly and read the full text of that, I can click that link. And down here I've got more detailed information about it. You can see I've got several tabs that go across the page here. So I start with my summary, but if I want to, the next one that says text, if I want to go back and look at different versions of the bill as it went through Congress, I can look at all 5 versions of that. Actions taken, you can go on across titles, co-sponsors. So they give you a lot of information in a fairly user-friendly format. And I'll just show you some of the other areas. This is just an example of what a congressional record page might look like. Let's see. Again, they make it easy to navigate. You can look, remember the old, whoops, no, it's still there. Does anybody even use the congressional record in print anymore? We threw ours out a few years ago. Just didn't
Maybe
have
to fall
time for
asleep
it.
at night.
Yeah, exactly. If you miss that and you want to, you can look at the entire issue there for that day in PDF. They've got it for you. Again, you can navigate, lots of handy links there. And again, if you want to see only like the House portion or the Senate portion, you can jump to that. A lot easier to navigate than the old big heavy books were.
Can we do FDSys and then?
Yeah, do you
'cause
want to jump to that?
I
Okay.
think it's the next one.
Okay.
I just don't want
sure.
to miss that one, and then we'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Give us another minute or two.
then Congress.gov is pretty user-friendly, so let's go ahead and jump to the last resource that I'm going to talk about. This one is less user-friendly, so it's a good idea that we get to this.
Can you give me the slide number, please?
Oh, it's 64.
Thank you, Mark. So this is another federal site, and it's pretty powerful. It's a little less user-friendly. I'll just go through it quickly to kind of touch on it. So it's FDSys stands for Federal Digital System. The Government Printing Office, which may or may not at some point change its name to the Government Publishing Office, maintains it.
Because we don't print anymore?
Yeah, like those congressional records. And here it gives you, as you can see, free online access to official publications from all 3 branches of the federal government.
So it's different from Congress.gov because it gives you all 3 branches.
Yes, Congress.gov focuses on legislation. So here's the home page of FDSys. Oops, let me get there. Again, it's a little more complicated than Congress.gov, but let me show you quickly. Get my little boxes to show up. They've got still got the nice search all box here in the middle of the page. You can do an advanced search. You can do a citation search. They do even have a help box, even though they're free. Over here, they've got a browse column. Then don't confuse it with searching. You can't go directly and search these. I'll show you that in a second. But you can browse all these resources over here. And here is how, if I did want to search a specific database, this is where it gets a little clunky. So I have to go to this page. I have to choose the resource from this list, and you can see I scroll down. There are a bunch of different resources. For example, there's the congressional record if I want to search it. I have to highlight it, put it over here in this box, and then way down here, and I've got a whole bunch of pop-ups that are going to come up in a second. I can choose my date, I choose my collection, add it to this box, and then finally down here, I choose what I want to search, whether that be full text, title, whatever. It depends on the resource, so they tailor it to the resource, so your options will change. And finally, in this last box, I would enter my search term. So in this case, I want to search veterans, hospitals, appointments, secret waiting list. Remember that was in the news a couple of months ago about this secret waiting list? So I want to find out, if we have some government documentation, some work actually being done on that. There we go. And if that's not enough, I can add more. I can get up to 5 more of these search boxes to come up and add more criteria. So you can control it a lot. It's pretty sophisticated, just not quite as easy to use as some of the more Google-esque resources. And here's what my results list might look like on that. Now it gets kind of familiar. You can narrow your searches over here in the left sidebar. It gives you some options. You can sort by relevance or date. And then, of course, I just click the link like any other resource to get to the actual document. And here, I knew you were waiting for it. Here is if I actually wanted to go to that congressional, you thought you were going to escape, I know. And it does highlight my terms there. Remember, I've searched for secret waiting list, or maybe I did a Control F. But you can see down here, I can actually find where in that ginormous thing that used to be a book, I can find where they were talking about my secret waiting list.
So she did do a Control F to find, because the congressional record is really long and they don't take you to the exact page where your keywords are. They don't highlight them for you. So Control F is going to really be your savior.
Yeah, and let's see, where is it? Yeah, and you can see though that even with the Control F, it is going to highlight it for you. So that will save you a lot of time from going through a whole bunch of pages.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready for a 5-minute break. Earlier, Mark is the Vice President of Internet for Lawyers, and he's my usual co-speaker and co-author of many, many books for the American Bar. I think we've written about 6 or 7 together. And Mark is actually my husband too. We'll tell you that. So there might be a little bias here. And Mark's very techie, so if you have techie questions after the noon hour, he can answer them if you thought of anything.
So you've heard a lot about free legal research resources on the web, but there are a lot of other kinds of free information available on the internet, particularly giving us the ability to do background or investigative research about people or companies or other entities. Now, there was a time when if you wanted to do this kind of research, you had to have very specialized tools, two-way wrist TV or a shoe phone or something fancy like that. But now all you need is a web-enabled device. Laptop computer, desktop computer, tablet, phone, anything with an internet connection will get you to the resources that we're going to talk about. One of the things that we do, like many people do, when we're beginning to research, we will start out by Googling the individual or the company, whatever we need more information about. And I use Google as a verb. I'm sure the folks in their legal department don't particularly care for that, but
Or maybe they do.
I do.
Everything's become Google.
So let's see what we can and should find about people, and let's see how we can hone in on that information. We're going to start out looking for an individual by the name of David Deja. David came to our attention a number of years ago, and we got a phone call from an attorney who had read an article that we wrote for the LA Lawyer magazine about using the internet for investigative and background research, particularly doing docket research on individuals. And he called us, this lawyer called us, because he had a client who was suing their former attorney for malpractice. Because this client had contacted their attorney and said, I'm considering investing $250,000 with a film producer by the name of David Deja. Can you do some due diligence research on the producer and see if he's the real deal? I mean, everybody in LA is a producer, right? How many people have a screenplay on their desk? Anybody?
Or know someone who does.
Yes. Everybody's a producer. So the client asked the original attorney to do some due diligence. The attorney contacts the client and says, yes, I've done the research and I found that he's a bona fide producer and you should invest this money with him. Well, after some time, the client had given Deja this money, the film was never produced, and the money was never returned. So the client wondered exactly what sort of due diligence their attorney had done, and began to do some background research on Deja themselves, and found a lot of information that indicated that maybe, even though he had produced some films, maybe he was not the safest investment for their $250,000 in terms of producing a film. And so the second attorney contacted us and asked us if it went to trial, if we could serve as expert witnesses to show the jury or finder of fact, whoever it turned out to be, how easy it is to find information about individuals online, and particularly information about this individual that might indicate a $250,000 investment in a film might not be a wise investment.
It was about $250,000 too much.
Yeah. So we're going to start out with a Google search. And rather than just type his first and last name into the search box, we had learned through other research that this film producer, David Dadon, did not use a middle name or initial. So we're going to search for his name as an exact phrase. We'll put it in quotation marks, telling Google to bring us back just the results where the name David precedes the name Dadon, and the names are spelled this exact way. It's a very literal search. When we do that, we get a regular list of Google search results, just like any other list that you would see. The first one indicates that he has produced films. This is a link to his IMDb biography page, the Internet Movie Database, because David Dadon has produced actual films. Not that I've met anyone who has seen them, but he has produced actual films. So as we're doing this due diligence, we'll have separate piles of information that we'll use to help advise a client to make our decision, and this will go in the yes pile. He's a bona fide film producer, so we'll put that in the yes pile. But as we continue down the list of our Google search results, we see this SEC filing. It's a 13D from a company called Brookmount. And in that 13D, David Dadon is listed as a plaintiff, suing the company, claiming that he was terminated from their board of directors without proper procedure. It's going to go in the maybe pile because we don't know the circumstances behind that termination. There's a possibility that it was indeed warranted, but we don't know yet, so we'll put that in the maybe pile. And then we'll continue down our list, and we'll see a press release from a company that is indicating they're calling attention to the fact that a judge in Arizona has issued an order barring David Dadon and one of his sons, Jacob, from operating publicly held companies. We're going to put that in the no pile. That would tend to indicate that perhaps these are not people we want to be in business with. But we're going to continue on our research through other sources, free sources on the net, and see which of these piles is largest at the end of the research, and we will have a better idea how to advise a client. So that is what our search looked like when we were first contacted about this case. That's what your search would look like up until about a year or so ago. If you ran that search today, the very first result on your results list would be a site called the David Dadon Due Diligence Resource Center. Now, you might not be lucky enough to have a research subject who has a website dedicated to information from the public record about their travails in court, including information about verdicts like this one that indicates that David Dadon and his son Jacob were found guilty of contempt and each adjudicated to serve 6 months less 1 day in prison. It's a court in Miami, Florida. We also, though, see that there's a very strong disclaimer on the site to let us know that it only provides publicly available information from the public domain of court files. It does not offer an opinion about David Dadon or his family. That's for us to decide when we figure out which one of these piles is largest. Additionally, there are links to exhibits that were used at various trials. This is a PowerPoint presentation in the matter labeled Abood versus Dadon Global Entertainment Holdings. And we also have links to video depositions from the case.
No idea. What movies have you produced in the last 3 years?
I don't recall.
You don't remember whether you produced a movie in the last 3 years?
That's what I told you about the second one you asked me.
That's going in the no pile, in case you're wondering.
Did I give your father $250,000? I don't recall.
So clearly we're not always going to find resources like this online for people who are searching for, but sometimes you just get lucky. And all of this information has been compiled by the individual who owns the David Dadon Due Diligence Resource Center, and they have posted it online. And again, it all comes from the public record. cases where David and or Jacob and or other members of their family have been sued for various business dealings. So they're definitely going in the no pile. Now, Carol mentioned earlier not paying for access to publications, because you can get free access to numerous very expensive databases via your public library. Here in LA, we have not only the city library, but also the county library system that offer different databases. If you live in another city in California that has its own separate library system, like Glendale or Burbank, check their web pages. If you live elsewhere in California or in the United States, almost every library, regardless of the size of the community, offers access to some databases for free to their patrons. Generally, you just need your library card and the barcode number on the back of the card in order to access the resources that are available on their page.
So you don't have to go to the library. It hurts me to say that, but you can do it from your home or office.
One of the things, though, that you have to do when you get to the library's webpage is figure out where they've hidden the links to these resources that they offer. If you don't know the web address for your library, you can visit a site called libdex.com, libdex.com, and enter the name of your town or city, and it will lead you to the link to the library. Or you could just Google the name of the city where you live and the word public library, and you'll usually end up with a link to the library's webpage. Then you have to figure out where on the page they have their databases. And they all use different terms. This is the LA Public Library webpage, and up at the top there's a label or a tab labeled Connections and Resources.
Collections.
Collections and Resources. And then underneath the submenu that flies out is a link labeled Research and Homework that will take us to the free databases that are available.
And
Now,
some libraries just say databases. I mean, you really have to look around for it.
yeah, and so here we're looking at the LAPL database page, and once we get to the page, we have a number of pieces of information that's available to us. First is a legend explaining the accessibility of the various resources. The vast majority of them are available remotely from our home or office. However, some are available only in the library, so you'd have to visit a branch. Some of them are only available at specific branches, usually the main branch here downtown. But there's this legend that explains what's available and where they are available.
And there's 166 different databases available for free.
We can view the alphabetical list. We can start out by narrowing the list down by topic, using those check boxes there at the top. We can also click the Find It button, which will, so we select one of the categories, we click Find It, and it will show me the list of databases that are available for that category. I can select one of two radio buttons. One is remotely from my home or office, and then there's a separate button to click to see which databases in that category are only available if you're visiting a branch. Separately, we can also browse the entire list alphabetically. If we know the name of a particular resource and we want to see it, we can browse. One drawback, though, for the newspapers or magazines, they're not listed individually. Not all of them are listed individually on the alphabetical list, because a lot of them are included in larger databases of newspapers and other publications. So they're, and we'll look at some of them, but there will be a database that includes 150 newspapers and 300 magazines. Well, they'll list maybe the top 10. We'll have to click on it, visit the database, and then see, in order to see all of the publications that are included. So it's not as easy to find a specific, more obscure resource. The major resources, if you're looking for newspapers, LA Times, Orange County Register, etc., those are usually called out. Wall Street Journal, USA Today, et cetera. But if you're looking for more obscure publications, particularly in smaller cities or towns in California or around the state, they're very often included in these databases, but we don't get access immediately to an alphabetical list so that we can determine which database we want to look in. And here's what the list looks like as we start to scroll down alphabetically. One of the, you'll see here, it mentions the LA Times and the historical archives of the LA Times being available in the ProQuest database. ProQuest, though, also includes 300 other US and international newspapers. In addition to the current database for the LA Times, 1985 to the present, the historical database covers 1881 through 1990. It also includes LA Daily News, LA Sentinel, Orange County Register, outside of California, papers like Chicago Tribune, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, et cetera. Other useful databases that we'll take a look at in more detail that are available at LAPL include General One File, also referred to as InfoTrack, Biography in Context, and a great people finding tool called Reference USA that we'll look at in just a minute. So that was the LA City Library, LAPL. A lot of people might not be aware that the County of Los Angeles also maintains a separate library system. It's completely separate from the LA City Library. So cities like Culver City that don't maintain their own library system have county library branches within the city. Unincorporated areas of the county also have county library branches. So you might, depending on where you live, you might be able to, I'm going the wrong way, you might be able to access the LA County library system and their collection of databases. So on their homepage, we click the Research and Learning tab, and then that gives us a drop-down menu that shows us, or it takes us to a page that lists the databases that are available at the county library. It's similar to the city library. We can browse them by topic, or we can browse them alphabetically. LA County has fewer databases than are available at the city library, but they do have the LA Times, the same 1985 to present coverage. They have a national newspaper database that covers a lot of the same papers that we saw at LA City Library. They also have regional and national newspaper databases, as well as Biography in Context and Reference USA that I mentioned. They have a database of TV news transcripts, which can be particularly useful if you're looking, doing background research on individuals or companies of note, or stories that have been in the news. They don't have InfoTrack, or General One File, as it's also known, which is very useful.
But sorry.
But sorry, not available at the county library. So here we see a list of the newspapers, et cetera, that are available at the county library system. So we're going to run some searches through some of the databases that are available at both of the library systems for David Dadon. Rather than going directly to individual news sources, we're going to use some of the regional news databases that are available, as well as InfoTrack and some of the others, to cast a wider net over multiple publications in multiple areas, geographic areas, to see what's being written about this particular individual. So here, we're doing a search through a database called Biography in Context. And in Biography in Context, we see an article from the entertainment trade publication Variety that relates the story of David Dadon being arrested and hit with a legal complaint alleging 1 count of unlawful confinement and 3 counts of indecent assault while he was attending a film festival in London. We're going to put this in the no pile. And again, this comes from the Biography Resource Center, also known as Biography in Context, which is available both at the city and county library systems. Also available in General One File and InfoTrack is access to multiple press release distribution services. Any company can issue a press release. They can send it directly to writers and reporters, or they can use a paid distribution service like Business Wire or PR Newswire to send that press release to journalists who have opted in to receiving information from those services. We can visit the websites of PR Newswire or Business Wire and search them individually to see if there's any mention of David Dadon, but by using a database like General OneFile or InfoTrack, you see it actually lists both names here at the top, we're able to search both PR Newswire and Business Wire simultaneously and other resources. So we can just do one search for the individual who we're looking for to create this dossier of information that we're trying to put together. And in case you were wondering, that story from Variety is going in the no pile. So here we see a press release issued by a company called Hairmax. And in it, Hairmax is discussing their business relationship with an individual by the name of David Dadon.
I think you're off the slide.
Oh, I am off a slide. Look at that. Here we're looking at a press release from a company called Valcom. And in this press release, Valcom is announcing that they have signed a deal with film producer David Dadon to help turn their company around. And in the press release, they indicate that they're very fortunate to have found an individual like David Dadon to help them in this turnaround because he is highly respected in the entertainment industry. Well, we're going to put that in the yes pile. He seems like a bona fide film producer. It's a small pile, but we're going to put that in the yes pile. And this press release was issued by the company back in September of 2003. We'll continue to look through our results at OneFile. And here we see a press release from November 2003 from a company called Hairmax. And here Hairmax is explaining their business relationship or the history of their business relationship with Dadon, in which they allege that David Dadon tried to remove duly elected members of their board. Dadon was in fact a member of their board of directors. He'd become a member of the board because Hairmax was investing in a film that Dadon was to produce. They gave him a large number of shares in their company and a seat on their board in return for financial interest in the film that he was to produce. After Dadon unsuccessfully attempted to oust other elected members of the board, the chairman of the board of Hairmax called Dadon's actions as the self-appointed chairman of the board of directors illegal, unauthorized, ineffectual, and without precedent in the history of the company. He actually went on to describe his behavior as just bizarre. So we're going to put that in the no pile.
And the film was never made.
Yes.
Of course, and the shares were never returned. Do you see a theme here?
Now here we're looking at a result from one of the many newspaper databases that are available to us. And this is a news article from the Miami Herald. And this is one of the reasons why I like to use a national or multi-jurisdictional newspaper database when I'm doing background research about a person, because you never know where they might have lived, where they might have allegedly defrauded someone, or have done business. So here in the newspaper article from the Miami Herald, we see an interview with the chairman of Hairmax, who describes their business relationship, explains how he had given 2 million shares of his company to David Dadon in return for interest to this film that was never produced. He indicates that when Dadon would not return the shares of the film in the company and the film was never produced, he alleges that they were duped by Dadon because the chairman of the company, once he sort of decided that he was not getting his shares back from Dadon, to do some background research on David Dadon and found numerous articles and other indicators that showed other businesses that had had similar dealings with David Dadon that included handing over portions of the company in the forms of large blocks of stock in return, and seats on their board of directors in return for investment in films that were never made. And he indicated that he wished he had done this research before he had gotten into business with Dadon, because he would have made a very different decision. So we're going to put this in the no pile and use this if needed when we testify as an indicator that it's not just our opinion that David Dadon might not be someone you would give $250,000 to. There are other people of the same opinion. And similarly, it gives us the ability to find other people who we may be able to depose, other people who we may be able to call as witnesses, to give direct testimony to their experience with David Dadon. So this kind of background research gives us a lot of different kinds of information that we can use for or against the decision to be in business with a particular individual. However, as late as January 2005, we see that the folks at Valcom are still happy to be in business with David Dadon. They, in fact, appoint him chairman of their board of directors. He apparently didn't have to do it himself this time because they were happy enough with his performance. So here we have a press release announcing the appointment of David Dadon as the chairman of the board of directors of Valcom. It gives us a fair amount of background information about Dadon, both personally and professionally. Tells us that he's married, tells us how many children he has, and their relative ages at the time that this press release was sent to the media. If we're looking for someone who'd gone missing, knowing that they're married, knowing that they have children and how many they have, knowing their relative ages, can be useful clues for us to find, if not the person we're looking for, other family members who might be able to lead us to the individual or at least give us some information about them. We know that one of his sons is named Jacob.
And he won't recall anything.
No, probably not. Do not recall. And in addition to that background information, there is also the professional information, including a list of films that Dadon produced, like this one called Very Mean Men. So he has produced actual films. And if we look at Very Mean Men, we see that it stars Matthew Modine, Martin Landau, Ben Gazzara, and TV's Chachi, Scott Baio. So he has produced actual films with actual actors who you will recognize. One of the things that I should have mentioned at the beginning of this portion of the presentation is that when we were contacted by the attorney whose client was claimed that they were defrauded and that their first attorney had
Not done our due diligence.
not really done due diligence. The film that was never produced in that situation was a film called Bad, Bad Men, which probably should have been the first red flag. And then there's this other film called Very Mean Men. So we also went to David Dadon's own website. It's always a good idea if you're doing background research on people to take a look at their own websites to see what they're saying about themselves. I mean, clearly they're going to be a bit biased. The information is going to be one-sided. If you're doing background research on expert witnesses, looking at their websites can be very helpful because often they will inflate their experience, their education, their expertise. Attorneys have told us they've had great success using information that expert witnesses have posted on their own websites about their processes in cross-examination. Because they will ask specifically, if this is your process, how did you apply it here? And what information that you have presented came from that? And very often they can't answer those questions because the process on paper is not the process that they use prior to testifying. So looking at their own websites can be very, very useful. And when we looked at David Dadon's, one of the other films that we found that he had actually produced was a film called Innocent Man. Now, I don't know if there's some sort of autobiographical trilogy that he's working on here with Very Mean Men and Innocent Man and the other. But these are actual films that he has actually produced. So those are going to go in the yes pile. And remember, everything that we're looking at currently are all allegations. Even the attorney who's contacted us, their client is alleging that the first attorney did not do enough due diligence because they would have found all of these indicators that would have said, don't go into business with this person.
So I just want to talk about, I think, one more slide or site very quickly before we close up. And that is, when I do research on people, I very often want to know their litigation history. Like, do they sue people a lot? Do they get sued a lot? Do they get sued for fraud? Do they get sued for, giving people shares of stock in their movies and don't make them. So, one of the first things I did, actually something I did very recently was I went to Google Scholar and I went to Fastcase and I looked to see if there were any lawsuits against David Dadon, and there were not. No lawsuits. But PACER, you must go to PACER to do your due diligence, because every time you file a suit at federal court, this is federal only, you have to file a complaint. And I found so many complaints against David Dadon, about 20. And they all had the same fact patterns, with him giving rights to his movie, the movie never being made, him taking money from all these people. So don't forget to do a PACER search by the name of the person you are looking for. And when you do that search, you type in their last name, comma, first name. And you can search all the courts together if you use the PACER locator. The PACER locator. Now I wanted to say one more thing about PACER. About a month ago, PACER upgraded their system. When they did that, PACER is made up of 214 different court databases. And it's not one big giant database. When PACER upgraded their database, a bunch of courts had incompatible systems. So what did PACER do? They took all those courts down. What did they take down? Well, they took down the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Central District of California for all cases filed prior to May 1st, 2001. Now, when I did my Dadon research a couple of years ago, I found a bankruptcy, Dadon's bankruptcy. Big red flag, right? Why would I tell my client to invest with someone who filed for bankruptcy? Those have been taken off. There are some other courts that have been taken down. You can just actually Google PACER and cases removed, because you need to be aware of what's not on PACER anymore. Second Circuit, 7th Circuit, 11th Circuit, and Federal Circuit, specific dates. So for California in particular, you've got to be aware of the Central District of California bankruptcy courts. Anything filed prior to May 1st, 2001, gone. So when I did my PACER research on Dadon, found lots of cases. They alleged a lot of the same fraudulent activity. And that just would have been, really what I should have known about if I was doing my proper due diligence, which the attorney did not. So I think we're going to stop here. We've kept you over a few minutes. Really appreciate your time. We hope that we've given you some ideas on how to search legal research for free or low cost, and how to do some background research for free. Thank you so much.